For Sunday, July 16th, you found the Georgia gang topping our agenda today. $1.6 million in bribes alleged at Atlanta City Hall. Grady Hospital wants to do a huge expansion. And all around the metro area, sneaky tax increases are digging into your wallets. Some of the stories up for grabs on the Georgia gang.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia gang starts now.
And we're glad you'll be with us on this Sunday. The gang's all here, ready to go. And we're going to go over some familiar ground to begin with, because we now have some explicit documentation that payments alleged to be bribes were paid at City Hall, and now the federal government, or at least the paperwork, has identified to whom those bribes were paid. Jeff, it appears that $1.6 million in checks written by the E.R. Mitchell construction companies, many of them, went to Mitzi Vickers, a campaign aide whom Kasim Reed named to a city department head spot.
Yeah, but you said that $1.6 million in bribes was paid, and that's not what the record shows at all. What we see is a pattern of payments between a private bank account to a private individual of $1.6 million. What we don't see, and what the feds have yet to nail down, is any bribery of any city official or anyone making a bribe to any city official. No one has been charged with making a bribe, and I want to make this clear, and no one has been charged with bribery at all.
But we do know two contractors,
Exactly.
Jeff, just to finish the record here, were charged with conspiracy.
And have pleaded guilty.
And have pleaded guilty
And have pleaded,
in an
and have pleaded
ongoing
guilty.
bribery investigation.
And they may have their own reasons for having done so. And they can plead guilty to whatever they'd like. They can plead guilty to conspiring to commit a bribe, which I think they did in fact do. But they have not committed
we just want
a bribe.
We just want to give the bigger picture.
They have not said that they bribed a city official, nor have prosecutors come forth and said that a city official has been bribed.
The prosecutors now are taking forever. I respect them, but
that's not unusual, Dick. And we've all watched these corruption investigations for years and years here in Atlanta and elsewhere, and they're building a case.
It is unusual, Phil.
No,
and it's
no,
unusual
you know
to
this.
this extent. Number one, and Dick and I, we've gone back far enough to know that in the old days, when somebody got bribed, it was with a brown paper bag stuffed with cash.
This
Phil,
is different.
you
This
know
is
this.
different.
It wasn't bank records. I mean, who writes a check and signs it and puts government relations in the memo if they think that they're committing an illegal act?
Let's say you're right. I'm going to move on.
let's say they think they're smarter than that.
Well, let's say you're right for the sake of argument to move the conversation forward, because this is an ongoing investigation. We all share the same sources somewhat, and Adam Smith is another key player. He is the procurement officer that was marched out on a Friday afternoon and fired by the Kasim Reed administration, and he's singing. We know from our sources. What is he singing? We don't know what he's singing, but we do know that he is a key player in something that's ongoing. We know a month ago the FBI sent in more agents to do more investigating. You know that too.
Presumably, Alexis, Adam Smith at the very least knows what these checks are for, besides what a couple of them did say, Jeff, government relations. I'm all for government relations, by the way.
Well, how would he know what the checks are for if they were made out to Mitzi Vickers, not
They
not
didn't
to
go
the
to
city?
Adam Smith. He wouldn't know a thing about it. I'm not so sure that these two individuals even know each other or have ever had any contact with each other.
We
are drawing connections that we do not know exist.
We do know that Adam is looking, is telling about a lot of the contracting. We do know, and it's been reported in the media, that they're looking at all sorts of contracts that may be shady.
Well, the other thing that may be happening is something that Jeff said weeks and weeks ago, is that these contractors were just duped by this one individual, and she just took the money.
Well, let's review the record on that. Mitzi Vickers was once on the good guy's side. She was elected to the Atlanta School Board. She was a preacher.
A gay Baptist.
Well, we didn't know all that then. We just knew she was a preacher who was elected to the Atlanta School Board.
Right.
Then she became an open gay. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but she veered off into real politics. And let's remember that she was Well, I mean, the school board isn't exactly the big stuff.
Okay.
But she became a political power broker. She helped deliver a runoff victory to Kasim Reed over Mary Norwood 4 years ago. The 700-vote squeaker that put Kasim Reed in the mayor's office.
Right.
She was there. She was active in that. She was corralling the voters, getting them to the polls, doing all the things that good political operatives did. Then she was rewarded, I don't think there's any other way to express it, by an appointment to an HR job at the city, putting her one step removed from the mayor and putting her near where all the contracts are written. I don't think that you have to have a degree from MIT to figure this thing out. The question becomes, how far do you connect it? How high does it go? So far, nothing touching Mayor Kasim Reed so far.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there are just so many assumptions that just don't hold. For instance, there's the assumption that there remains an alliance between the mayor and Mitzi Vickers, and I'm not so, and I know, in fact, that that assumption is patently false. Yeah, we don't have enough information. This we know. The feds, who have got tremendous power, subpoena power, the power to get your bank records, the power to get your emails, the power to come in, search your home, take your computers, have been doing this for over 2 years and haven't made a single substantive indictment.
That is not unusual. That is not unusual.
They got two contractors.
They did get.
They again have charged no one with bribery or with accepting a bribe. Can you acknowledge that?
You know what? Yeah, it's an ongoing investigation, and I think.
How long is it going to go on? Like the Pickwick Papers?
We know that you're always going to defend Kasim Reed. This is a serious investigation, as I mentioned before, and you don't like this. They're looking at airport contracting, other contracting. That's why they brought in more FBI agents.
I'm glad that you mentioned Kasim Reed, because the fact of the matter is we have had a wildly successful mayor for 2 terms. Well, he is in his final
we've heard you.
In his final
we've heard you say this every other week.
5 months in office, and we've got this hanging over him, this cloud hanging over him, and it might just be smoke, no fire.
You know,
he
better lawyer up.
Here's the thing, you know, he doesn't need to lawyer up.
He does need to lawyer up.
Maybe you need to lawyer up for the kinds of statements that you're making publicly, because you don't know what the heck you're talking about. Here's what we know.
Jeff.
Here's what we know, Jay.
You're much
in a
smarter
situation like this, all you have to do is follow the money. That's all you have to do.
Well, on the money trail, this was a big week.
Right.
That's my point, Alexis. Yeah. $1.6 million in checks
to
Mitzi Vickers.
What got delivered for that money? That's what.
Has Jeff ever criticized Kasim Reed? I'd love to know that.
Maybe the contracts themselves were bought and paid for. The many contracts that E.R. Mitchell and as many companies had were delivered by Mitzi Vickers. That's what it looks like on the surface.
Maybe it's all
and until
smoke
I'm
and
disabused
no
of that, that's what it looks like.
Maybe it's all smoke and no fire.
You hope.
I mean, you hope that there's something to it. Clearly.
Well, do you think the government would be spending all of this money over nothing?
Yes.
Well, in the meantime, let me wrap this up, because I think it's time for the feds to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mainly because you've got so many lives dangling out there.
Absolutely.
Adam Smith, who by all accounts was a solid professional, came from a mainstream law firm. You got the reputation of Kasim Reed dangling. You've got a mayor's race, which some of this slime could slop over onto candidates.
It took several years for the Atlanta public school cheating scandal to be fully investigated and unfolded. And I think, Jeff, and you can hold your opinions, that's fine, but I think that let's see where the chips fall where they may with this investigation, because there's been dirty contracting going on in this city for over 30 years, and we don't know if it stopped.
No longer than that.
Really?
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's been longer than...
We got to get out.
I'm glad you're admitting there's been dirty contracting.
There are this isn't a matter of waiting until the chips fall. These are going to be boulders. They're going to be boulders lobbed onto City Hall.
We'll memorialize those remarks and see what happens. Because my prediction is nothing will.
All right. Well, remember, it was in April 2016 that I made one of my rare predictions on this broadcast, and I said that Hillary Clinton would not be elected president. You remember that?
Yeah.
I don't crawl on that. So I'm saying now boulders are going to land on City Hall on Mitchell Street in the city of Atlanta, Georgia. We got to get out. When we come back, Grady, hospitals are broke, right? Everybody's broke? Wait a minute. Grady plans to spend $165 million. We'll explain it when we return.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
I, for one, was stuck with a disconnect this week when I was watching the fight in Washington, D.C. over changing the health care laws and protecting especially rural hospitals in Georgia. Here comes Grady with one of those pioneering type Atlanta announcements that we've grown to like, but I still got to wonder about it. Planning, Alexis, to spend $165 million for a new mega tower on its downtown campus.
Yes.
And a whole bunch of more additional money included in that for a large AIDS operation on Ponce, where they have a facility. Now, they say half from us, Fulton and DeKalb.
Yes.
I hadn't signed up yet. Okay, just want to let you know. And then the other half from the private sector,
fundraising,
which they've proven they can do before.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
Well, I think it's very exciting and wonderful for the community and wonderful for Grady, because they are really making an imprint in the community for what they can do. And they took over that building, I can't remember what it was on Ponce de Leon, where there's been converted to the AIDS Center of Operations, and it used to be a Presbyterian Center or something, I can't remember. And so they're going to have that fully equipped and established. So it's going to be, I think they're going to do it.
But Jeff, you're the economist in the group. Seriously, how does it pay for itself? How does a Grady, which is a charity hospital, bankroll? Okay, I get the $165 million. You divide it in half. Half of it's from you and half of it's from Phil, the two counties, DeKalb and Fulton. And then they could raise the other money, I guess, through the business community. But to what end? Is it endless? It's all charity money. It's free care in the main at Grady.
There's a lot of indigent care there. I think that they're doing a better job with collections overall. Grady is not just an indigent hospital anymore, and a lot of people realize that. Folks know now that if you're in an accident or if you're something else, that Grady is
if you're burned, that's where you're going.
It's the place to go. It's the best burn. It's one of the best burn centers in the nation. 165 is really not all that much of a lift for Grady Memorial Hospital because of its really strong business connections now.
They have a foundation.
And that's as a result of the 501c3 and the self-perpetuating board that was put in place about 10 years ago there. And as a result of that, we're able to raise about twice as much as that 165. I think here's the rub, and that is when you say you want 165, whatever the number is, and you want half of it from the public sector, you're saying to the private sector, you know, we're asking taxpayers to contribute, and that's going to be the issue, whether or not Fulton and DeKalb are going to pony up that $60 or $65 million, or no, I'm sorry, $80 or $85 million, and we're still stuck with whether or not other neighboring counties in the metro area ought to be participating.
Everyone from every county goes to Grady.
Everybody goes to Grady.
From all over the state.
Everybody goes to Grady. Why can't everybody chip in? Why is it just these two counties?
In fact, I think one year Grady treated patients from all 159 counties.
That's not unusual.
And already, what's interesting about this is the political will, I don't think, is there, because what you really have in the Fulton and DeKalb commissions is efforts to reduce the payments to Grady, because they have become large and burdensome in the eyes of many.
It's also, in a way, and I don't, maybe this isn't a very good comparison, but it's reminiscent of this idea that they had of a new symphony hall over there on 14th Street. Wanted to raise $300 million, 100 from the public sector. Never happened, right? Of course, because the public sector didn't. I think $100 million was from the state, and they kind of laughed at it.
The folks at Grady are smarter now. The people behind Grady are a lot smarter now.
Yes.
They didn't announce this unless they knew they had a shot at the money.
Oh, I think it's going to be an easy lift for them.
But just, I'm asking a philosophical question. I know it's apples and oranges, but I want to ask it. How much could $165 million do to solve the problem of our closing and crumbling rural hospitals all over the state, where people are 20 and 100 miles from hospital care?
Well, that is the number one crisis.
$165 million.
That is the number one health crisis in the state, is the rural hospitals, and to stop their closures.
And a lot of that would have been helped had they expanded the Medicaid program.
Well, that would have cost untold money. We've been through that argument.
Well, I think that
but there's other solutions other than that.
And we're comparing apples and oranges operations to capital improvements.
Right.
You know, this is all for capital.
But I am glad finally the legislature is focusing on rural hospitals. You're absolutely correct.
Right.
So.
And they need to do that.
Yeah.
All right, well, let me turn my phone off and regroup. You know, I spent a lot of time getting this broadcast together. We only done 2 topics.
That's
What
okay.
kind of host am I?
That's okay.
I mean, we got a lot of stuff to cover, so let's take a commercial break and come back and try to do it. Stay with us. Answer your phone.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Visit their website at fox5atlanta.com.
Okay, we're going to talk politics in a little bit. We're going to talk money first. Governor Roy Barnes, the former governor, went into the Marietta newspaper a week ago and raised Cain about a bill he authored that was supposed to stop backdoor tax increases. And he noted, as did the Marietta paper, that every city in Cobb and the county itself were raising taxes. But in most cases, they weren't calling it a tax increase. They weren't rolling back the millage to accommodate for the growth.
Right.
And if you look around, that's
Nobody
happened
is.
everywhere. Everybody's got a backdoor tax increase. So where's the taxpayer revolt?
Well, I think there is going to be one, and let me just take Cobb County as one example. And you know, you and I, Jeff, you and I just talked last week about the rolling back of millage
Well,
rates.
now, they're not only not rolling back, they're adding.
Well, let's talk about that in Cobb
They are,
County.
yeah.
The assessments have gone up in Cobb. The property tax hike has been proposed in Cobb, and the school board wants to raise taxes in Cobb. I think if you're going to see a revolt, you're seeing
That's
some
what's
already. And the commission chairman, Mike Boyce, is on the hot seat. He campaigned as a fiscal conservative. Of course, we all remember that he ousted incumbent Tim Lee, and we all, of course, have discussed about the Braves stadium.
But he also
and the
promised to
expenditure.
pay that Parks bond fund that had been delayed because of the recession.
He did. He
So
did.
there's where a lot of that new money is coming
That's
from.
where he's saying, and then of course the folks that you want to expand the police force are mad because they're not getting the money. So it's a mess in Cobb, and I see a revolt brewing.
Well, they already had the revolt in Fulton.
They did.
Well, I was going to say Fulton is, and we can't get into the detail, but we're going to cover that because there's some interesting proposals being made in Fulton County, like that proposition in California could be applied to states in Georgia or counties, specifically counties like Fulton.
To have a referendum to say yes or no.
In the meantime, DeKalb, where things usually go badly, passed a nice budget, gave targeted raises to their law enforcement officers.
Absolutely.
No muss, no fuss
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Film industry, we got some numbers this week. We'll just throw them out there. Hollywood South, that's Georgia, #2 in film production, and directly spent was $2.7 billion last year, with an overall effect of $9.5 billion into the state's coffers and pockets because of the film industry.
And just think of this, hasn't it been at least 5 or 6 years now that we've had these tax credits and we're finally enjoying
these tax incentives that have really spearheaded so much of this, exactly right, so much of the growth.
And it has made Georgia the #2 area outside of California for film.
You drive around Metro Atlanta and other cities, you see film crews
and you can't
signs.
get around because right.
And you got the trick. One of the tricks is to learn to read their signs.
Right.
I still haven't quite figured it out, but it's fun to figure it out.
Yes, they use initials a lot for the name of the film.
It's fun to try to figure out where they are.
Well, a friend of mine was on Peachtree just the other day, and they were filming a movie in a helicopter. They closed the street off, and a helicopter came down as part of the movie.
All right, politics, the race for governor. Casey Cagle announced that he has $2.7 million raised. He's in good shape. He's well out there in front of the other Republicans. But Hunter Hill has raised more than $1 million. Brian Kemp, respectable at $1.7 million. And then there's the case of the fourth candidate, Michael Williams, the original Trumpist in Georgia. And Michael Williams has loaned himself a lot of money, so he's got $1 million. But he gave a press conference Thursday at the state capitol that was a total bust. He didn't have anything to say. He promised all kinds of big scoops, and he didn't deliver. What's up with that guy?
Well, Jeff and I do PR work, and I think we might both agree that was a horrible PR failure. Because you never have high expectations, and then, as you point out, you don't deliver. And so I just think the whole thing was a bust. I think he hurt himself. And if he's got something to say about Casey Cagle, or if he's got policy issues, start saying it. Because you don't call a press conference and then nothing happens.
But that's what our president does.
Oh, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. He has done so much work. If you want to talk about Trump, I know you guys like to bash Trump every week,
when he was
but it is the
running for
Georgia
president,
gang.
when
But
he
I tell you what, he's had a successful trip to France, and you know, I don't know why you always have to go off on Trump.
Back to reality. No, I think you did.
No, I'm just, she made the point. I'm going to defend him
I don't
when
think
he's
Jeff
attacked.
said a word.
I didn't mention his
In the
name.
mayor's race, any fundraising reports
Persona non grata.
jump out at you in the mayor's race? In the mayor's race, the fundraising
Fundraising reports?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that we know pretty much where everything is aligned at this point. You know, Mary raised over $1 million. We reported last week. Caesar Mitchell seems to be breaking out ahead a little bit, both in fundraising and in his polling. I think that the race is going to tighten. I'm not so sure that all the people in the race are going to qualify next month.
Were there any
End up
candidates who did not show well in fundraising, whose candidacy may be in jeopardy?
Keisha Lance Bottoms needs to raise a lot more money.
Well,
but it's early.
It's early. She's got a great message. I think she's going to do well. You probably would have expected a little bit more fundraising, particularly with the Barnes machine behind him from Vincent Ford. John Eves' numbers were a little disappointing.
They were in the
for
bottom
somebody
of the
who's been who's been around for such a long period of time. And so, you know, if the money is any indication, maybe some of these people will reassess and say, wait a minute, I might not go forward.
You know, I'm
Also-
asking vague questions.
Why is that?
Phil sent me all the fundraising reports.
And you didn't read them?
No, he didn't attach them.
Oh,
Well, I'm glad we're.
Well, wait.
I'm glad we're
Thanks,
telling
pal.
you now.
I also add that.
I love toying with him. Yeah.
Let me also add that Caesar Mitchell is sort of rolling out some endorsements along with the
Joe
finances.
Lowry.
Joe Lowry,
Yeah.
Reverend Dr. Joe Lowry, and also AFSCME, the American Federation of Municipal, State, and County Employees.
Endorsed Caesar Mitchell.
Yes,
Now, that's a blow to Vincent Ford.
yes,
In fact, you could argue that might be the most important union, that and the police union and fire unions, right?
right.
But it's still very early, and we're going to see endorsements and more money coming in. I would remind folks that 8 years ago, Kasim Reed was not raising a lot of money and not having support in the polls, and then, of course, he was elected mayor. So these things
Yeah, it's
have a
still
way of
early.
turning quickly.
Yeah,
Still
it
early.
can
Let Phil
turn.
crow a little bit. Phil made a big issue, rightfully so, over these Brandon Hill condominiums near Clarkston and DeKalb County. And the county is tearing them down, Phil. Good for you and for Commissioner Nancy Jester.
Thank you. As you remember, we went out there a couple years ago with a Fox 5 camera team and a policeman, and it was a hellhole. It was a disservice to the refugees that have been dumped there. It's a condominium complex. Thank you to, yes, Nancy Jester, and to Michael Thurman.
Michael Thurman,
and to a
absolutely.
court decision that finally allowed the demolition. It's awful. Their fires are broken out. County inspectors weren't coming, so we're finally cleaning up Brandon Hills.
Okay, there. That's your reward for
Thank you.
not sending me the fundraising totals. All right. When we come back, believe it or not, winners and losers.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
And remember us on Facebook, please. Pretty good discussions going on there. Jeffrey, winners and losers.
Nate Goldston.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, died on the 4th of July. We hadn't mentioned that. He was the founder of Gourmet Services, Inc., and was just really a trailblazer during the days of Maynard Jackson in minority entrepreneurship. And so hats off to Nate Goldston and his long legacy here in the city of Atlanta. And at Hartsfield, $1 billion in concession sales. They hit that mark last week and had a little press conference out there, don't he, man? So good for them.
That's a lot of high-priced sandwiches. $1 billion.
Even at high prices,
yeah,
a lot of sandwiches.
Go ahead, Alexis.
Okay, I want to congratulate Vicki Melinda Morrow, who is the new president of the National Black Arts Festival. And they had their signature fundraiser this past week, and congratulations to her. And also the board chair, Lolita Browning Jackson, who is also taking a new position at Comcast as a liaison between the company and local governments. And finally, our own Theron Johnson was named a man of influence by the Atlanta Business League this week when they had their annual recognition of men who are doing great things in Atlanta. He, along with 7 others, including the president of Clark Atlanta University, Dr. Ronald Johnson. So congratulations to Theron.
Philip?
Well, I've got winners for 3 federal judgeship nominations by the Trump administration, and they're all good conservative constitutionalists. Tripp Self and Billy Ray, they're both Court of Appeals judges already, and Michael Brown, a prosecutor. It's interesting because Governor Deal will now have a chance to even further reshape the Court of Appeals. And remember another winner. Remember Ashley Bell? He was a Hall County commissioner. He is now the Associate Director of the Peace Corps. He was named in the Trump administration, African-American rising star.
I'll make as my winner Sonny Perdue. He came back to the state this week to talk, as Secretary of Agriculture, to talk about overturning Michelle Obama's school lunch programs. I thought it was great. And it reminds us of how politicians are different. If Governor Deal is steady and salt, Sonny Perdue is rowsome and pepper. Because he really, he said, hey, it's not what we feed them at school, it's what they do on the way to school and on the way home from school that causes obesity. I thought it was wonderful for some straight talk from our former governor. Get well wishes to Jimmy Carter. And hey, the Braves baseball ratings on TV are up 50%. That's pretty cool. See you next week on the Georgia Gang.